Hello, are you ready to get into how I budget, how I manage my money on my unemployment benefits, not on a full-time income, because I have been unemployed since August of 2023 when I was laid off. So I still have not found that next full-time job, but we're working towards it. So I want to give you some kind of look at the systems that I have in place to ensure that I am managing the unemployment income the best way that we can. For those of you who are new here, I am Danny and I talk about all things personal finance, career, mental health from my first gen experience. So if those videos sound like things that you would enjoy, please consider subscribing. It really helps out my channel, helps me know what kind of videos you like to watch. So we're gonna go into kind of the systems that I have in place. Before I go into my specific systems, I wanna share what my household looks like. So it is my husband and I. We are a two-person household. We are currently living in the basement of my mother-in-law's. So you'll see in my breakdown, our rent is almost non-existent. And we are both looking for our next full-time jobs. My husband has been unemployed since April of 2023 and does not receive unemployment benefits. So these unemployment benefits are for a two-person household. Okay, so I want to start first by kind of sharing my ideology behind how I budget. And I know people feel some type of way about a budget. I get it. It feels restrictive. And so for me, I've always changed it to being a spending money plan, right? I'm creating a plan for how I'm gonna spend the money that I have. And you'll see how I've created that in the kind of budget that I have, for lack of better words, the budget that I have created, so that it doesn't feel like, okay, this is super restrictive, but instead it's a plan for how to spend the money the way that you want. I've also been a huge fan of the pay yourself first method, which really is just what it means. You save first and then you can spend freely the way that you want. Or at least that's how I have just found it to be. You'll also see that in how I list out the money method budget plan. That's just kind of what my philosophy around budgeting is. Right? I don't want it to feel restrictive, so I make sure I pay myself first and then can spend guilt-free after that. Right now, without a job, it has been very less focused on how I'm going to save because I'm not saving right now. I am not saving at all. It is hard for me as someone who loves to have money goals to feel like, I'm not in the position to be saving. Let's dive in first. And I want to start with sharing how I use Google Calendar. Google Calendar is a big player in my systems. And why is it a big player? Because I think it's so important to have a clear vision and mapping of what the month looks like and what might have an impact on your finances. So I have here the standing bills that I pay, right? We have my credit card payments due every 10th. We have the cell phone bills on the 13th. These are just when they're due. I have automatic payments set up, so I don't need to remember to pay them, but I like to know when they'll be withdrawn from my account. I also have my unemployment certification reminders here. It's every Monday or Sunday, but I put it on Monday as final date that you need to certify. And then I have things like birthdays on here because they might impact whether, I have to buy gifts, whether we have to account for going out to eat for somebody's birthday. It helps us map out what's coming up the week ahead. I love using Google Calendar alongside my tracker. Let's move over to my tracker. The spending plan is the best tab, I think, to start with. It is broken down by each month. I hit every other month besides the months in the first quarter, which we are currently in. And I have a planned income of $2,900 from unemployment. And then I listed a reselling because we are reselling our wedding stuff. And so I have that here, and I didn't know what would be planned because it's been months that it's been listed for and hasn't sold. We finally sold one item. So I have, first I break it down by the expected income, right? What do you expect to receive, the planned, and then at the end of the month, or as you go along, however you prefer, you can add them in here. So that's the total income. And then the monthly must pays. This is one half of the pay yourself first system that I use. So the monthly must pays are really like your housing costs, your bills, and here I have all of the things that we pay on a monthly basis that will still be there every month. Monthly must pays doesn't necessarily mean it's a necessary expense, right? Because we have here like subscriptions, and that isn't necessarily needed, right? We have Spotify and Netflix. You also have rent here, and you'll see this is what I mean by our rent is super affordable and like such a privilege because we are living with parents in this time period, which is something that kind of happened by chance. We moved in here, or made the decision to move back into the basement before I got laid off. And that was because we wanted to buy a home by the end of the year. And obviously those plans have shifted, but we are still here, and it has helped us be able to not use all of our savings because our rent is so low. So that is your monthly must pays. And then the monthly must save. So like I mentioned, right now, savings is just not a priority for us. We are trying to just get the next job, and then we'll beef up our savings goals. But sadly, that just means that we have zero in savings. We aren't investing. We aren't creating sinking funds for the holidays next year. So once we get jobs, though, we will be throwing that back into savings. We will be adding money back in here. And after we take into consideration our must pays, we are left with our spending money. So we have about $1,500 in spending money per month. And I've already kind of added some of our current spending, but usually I come in here at the beginning of the month and this is blank, but I was updating this yesterday, so that's why there are numbers here. So usually I make a plan for like, okay, what do we want to spend in transportation? Food is a big one. We are trying to like eat as much at home, but we also want to keep in mind that like we want to go out, we want to be able to have like those experiences. So the $700 is for both groceries and eating out. Personal care, this includes my Solid Core subscription, which I'm thinking about reducing because it's about $330, and that's just so high. Medical care, so this is all like your co-pays and anything related to that we have here. I know Ari has a couple of doctor's appointments this month, so wanted to take that into account. Shopping, this includes everything from buying clothes to just buying things on Amazon. I didn't have anything set aside for this, but already we've spent $300 on the shopping category. I think that is a big part of like having gone on a little trip. We just got back from Denver. We did some thrifting, but Ari also got a souvenir at a game that we went to. There's also giving, and that can be in a form of donation or gifts. Entertainment, the fun stuff, like what are we doing? Are we going to the movies? Are we seeing a show? Housing related, anything not rent related would go into this. And then travel. So that's kind of how I break it down. We were gonna be definitely over the amount that we have, which is where our savings comes into account. And so with what I budgeted, we still don't have enough to cover it, which means not only are we using the unemployment benefits, but we are using some of our savings to cover our expenses. Then after I create the spending plan, I have to go deep into each month. Ari and I have some time scheduled today to walk through this, but I got it started for us as I usually do, simply just being the one that's more interested in personal finance, and I create this spreadsheet so I'm more passionate about it. But because we are a two-person household, it is important that we meet and have these conversations together, which is what we're doing today. But I completed some of these items, right? So for every month we look ahead, and then at the end of the month we look back. So looking ahead, what might impact our savings goals. Our trip to Denver was something that could impact our savings goals. We stayed at Ari's stepsister's house, so we didn't have to pay for lodging, and honestly they were super generous with like letting us raid their fridge, but we wanted to take into account like some of the gifts that we might bring to our nephews. And then 4 birthdays. We have 4 birthdays in January, a lot of birthdays, and so are we doing stuff for those? Let's think about them. Where do I want to challenge my spending this month? This is an opportunity for us to reflect on what didn't go well last month. What do we want to really think about, like trying harder towards? And that for us is groceries. We are the kind of people that like buy groceries and then like we feel like eating out one day, we'll eat out even though we bought groceries. So we really want to get that down to $500. Can we just eat food at home? Si hay comida en casa. And then which value do you want to focus on in your spending this month? We don't want to focus our like any spending that we're doing, we need to be very mindful of. So we want to see if there are ways to spend time with people that we love without spending money. So that one is kind of like right now that we're not getting full-time, we don't have salaries, we should really just kind of think about how to do things on the free. And then I break it down by the money that we have available and the big upcoming expenses. So money that we have on hand, I take into account what's in our checking account, what we have in cash, our travel funds, our individual travel funds. So we do have our own travel funds to be able to take from for trips that we have planned, which you'll see in the big upcoming expenses. And then our emergency fund. We are running low on the emergency fund, so we want to do the best that we can with that spending plan that I showed you. And the total available we have is $10K. $10K is the cash that we have to use for the next whatever months until we get a full-time job. But also it has, every kind of category has its specific role that is playing, right? Like this $4,000 is for the honeymoon. The $700 is for Ari's travel. So they all have a purpose that they play. Big upcoming expenses. We have to book our lodging for our honeymoon. I have estimated probably $1,000. We should be booking that this month because we're going in a busy time. Want to get that scheduled ASAP. Sister trip, I've already booked the flights. So we have to just like book excursions and things like that. And then we have a big annual fee coming up. Our Amex is due, their annual fee is due at the end of the month. And so we need to think about how we're going to call Amex. What are we going to, what can they do for us, right? We're both not working. So is there a way they can reduce this for us? That coming up is $2,200. Then again, I have the income that we will be receiving. So already we got paid for 2 weeks of unemployment. We've resold an item. So far, our income that we've had is $1,500. And then I also have a category for like how we want to split our income, because I do think that Ari and I should get it's important for every individual to like have their money that they can spend freely without the other person judging, right? And so we have an amount that goes into our joint account, and then we get $50 per check in our personal checking account, which isn't a lot, but it'll hopefully continue to add on. And then it just, until we're ready to get those like full-time jobs again, it'll stay at 50, and we'll just have to be okay with that being a small amount to begin with. So that's kind of like the overview. And then my favorite part is the spending tracker. So like I said before, we as a couple manage our money together, right? And so for me, I loved going in here and adding every expense that I was spending money on. And that, like that was fun for me. For Ari, it's not so fun, right? He doesn't want to have to put in everything he spends his money on. He's like, can we automate this? So I found an in-between, and I started using Copilot. This is just sharing my screen, like what it kind of looks like, how much money we've spent so far. It gives you the breakdowns, right? I want us to use this alongside with the tracker that I created because I think, it helps automate some things that Ari might not enjoy, but it still gives me the nitty gritty of the breakdown of like where all the spending went. So what I do here is, I'm still working on, I'm starting to learn this system. I don't know it very well. I'm on the free trial right now and just reached out to see if I can personalize all these categories because I have my unique way of calling them. But my goal is that this gives us like a better way to automate the manual tracking of our spending. And what I do is I dump it into a tab on the spreadsheet. And then I organize it so it's in the same way that I receive the information on this tracker for our spreadsheet. So I did this yesterday, what we've spent so far, every detail, right? There's Target, there's Roadrunners because I'm doing the 9+1 program, Trader Joe's, CVS, our flight to Amsterdam, the points that I used, my sister's half of her flight, Premium, I got LinkedIn Premium and I forgot to cancel it. I did get refunded, so you'll see that later on in here. Yeah, so it just breaks down like every single expense and then gets that summary right here so we can see how we're doing. And then I can go back to the spending plan and say, okay, we didn't budget anything for miscellaneous. And look at us, we're at 140 already. It helps me be aware of what I might need to make shifts with for the rest of the month. And so that is like the monthly picture. And then we have the DISC goals, and that is debt, investing, and savings. So we don't really keep credit card debt. We do pay it off in full every month. And so for us, it's less about, what balance we have and how much we're paying towards that balance, but more about like, what is the existing balance today so that we know we need to pay it off today. So right now, our Amex bill is at $170. Our Capital One is at $868 because it's those flights that I talked about already. And so that we know we need to pay before February. And so that's kind of just how we keep organized of how much we had how much balance we had on our credit cards that month. Again, no investing goals, but once we do get jobs, we have goals for each of these, right? We want to be able to put money in our 401k. We want to be able to invest in a Roth IRA, HSA. So until we get those full-time jobs, though, these will stay empty. And then our savings, right? We don't have any particular things that we're currently saving for. I mean, the first thing that we're going to want to save for when we get those jobs again is to beef up the emergency fund, because based on our monthly must pays, which are, the same categories that we saw in the spending plan, we really only have 3 months in our emergency fund right now. If we're looking at what our fund is, $4,100, and what we need to cover 3 months of our expenses, we have less than 3 months. And so for us, once we get those jobs, it is going to be a priority to make sure we have a fund, an emergency fund. And this will probably look different, right? So it'll be probably like $1,800. And so it'll be the fund based on what we are going to be spending on rent and other items. And so we will have princess savings here, but not right now. So that's kind of like the system that we're using. We have the Google Calendar, we have the money tracker that I created myself, and we're using Copilot to kind of keep that tracking done for us without us having to manually update the spreadsheet. Something that you haven't seen is that conversation that I am going to have with Ari, because if you are part of a couple, if you're not managing your money alone, then yes, you need to have conversations with your partner as like, does this make sense? Where should we allocate more money? And so that's something that we're meeting about today. But I wanted to kind of just share with you like the systems that I have in place to just keep a close look at our money. Hopefully, once I get that full-time job in the next month, I will be able to put on some investing and savings goals because, yeah, we really want to be able to start investing again. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please hit that like button. It helps our channel a lot. And share this video with somebody that you think might benefit from this way of managing their money. And subscribe for more first gen money content. Yeah. Anyway, I'll see you all next week.